بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
Now, if you remember in the previous sections, we have already discussed about the certificates. Now, digital certificates are something similar to passports, which is going to provide the identity. So every controller requires a certificate, whether it is a vManage or vSmart and the vBond, they should have their own certificate. And before that, every controller must have a root certificate. Now, the root certificate is something issued by the CA. So there will be something called root certificate, root CA. And whatever comes below to that, they all will be trusted. So let's say I'm going to use my vManage and the vSmart and my vBond. So the first step, what we have to do is we need to install the root certificate here. Because whenever this vManage is going to send its certificate, it is going to check the certificate is issued by which CA. And if that root certificate is installed, automatically it is going to trust that. Okay. So the prerequisite, you must have the root certificate must be present inside the each controller. And also there will be a separate certificate called controller certificate. We can also call it as identity certificate in a normal terms, which is being signed by the CA. So we call this as a controller certificate, and there should be a root certificate or the root CA, which must be present for each controller. Now, when we say controllers means these three will come into that. And also we'll be adding the V edges a little bit later on. Now, whenever you get the controllers, by default, these root certificates will be pre-installed by default, except the enterprise CA. So if you remember, we have different options. We can either use the Cisco PKI, public infrastructure, where you get the certificate signed from Cisco, or you can get it from Symantec digital cert. Probably there is another option you can get. So whenever you get the controllers, you will have the root certificate installed by default. So which means you don't need to install the root certificate normally in normal cases, unless you decided to go with the enterprise CA. So in the enterprise CA, we are going to set up our own CA server, and this CA server is going to be responsible for providing the certificates. So which means whatever the root certificate, we need to install these things manually on the controllers. So in our case also, the first step will be we need to install the root certificate. That is going to be the root certificate authority on each and every controller. So that will be the first step. But if you're using other options, as I said, root certificates will be pre-installed. Now, the next option, there will be something called certificate signed request. Now, this CSR, again, we discussed, every controller will generate its own CSR, send it to the CA, and the CA is going to sign and send it back. After that, that particular, now probably that will be like identity certificate for each controller. Now, this CSR is generated for each controller, and each and every controller, we generally add it from the vManage. So which means we need to do everything from the vManage, or whenever the administrator is going to initiate the connections, probably at that point of time, this process happens. It's going to request the CSR, and it's going to verify that certificate signed request option.